and welcome to CBM Voice Chat, episode 26. I'm your host, as always, Neophant, and with me, as always, is my podcasting partner, AngryBlackManta.
Hello.
And joining us is our third member, our third Calabero, and also an important member of the podcast, Hank.
I had a burp that was going to compliment an introduction, and then right as you said my name, it just vanished, so I'm really disappointed.
Well, good things come eventually, so you'll get your chance soon enough. But it's been a while.
I'm so disappointed because it was one of those things where you're like, "Ooh, there's one coming. I'm gonna do it. I'm good." And then right as it went, it just vanished.
It's the nervousness. I bet that's it.
Good things will come to those who wait. What?
So basically, we haven't really recorded in a while. I've been busy. I don't know, man. Have you been busy? There's been a ton of comic book things that have happened over the last few months since our last recording. There was a new Marvel movie. There's a legitimate Captain Marvel movie that is coming out soon. There's a whole bunch of comic book stuff that's kind of happened in between. But today we've all agreed, and we're here to talk about a TV show that has nothing to do with Marvel or DC, but it does have a lot to do with the superhero comics in general. And as an adaptation of a comic book to the screen, we want to tell you and talk to you guys about The Umbrella Academy. And I got to ask you guys, what do you guys think of The Umbrella Academy? We'll start with the original comic.
The original comic's fucking weird.
How so?
Okay.
Because for a lot of people were introduced to the Umbrella Academy because Netflix has such a reach that as soon as the trailer came out, I was like, because I remember I saw the trailer, I'm like, oh, this might be interesting, and then the first thing I see is Gerard Way wrote a comic, and then so I watched the show first, and then recently I've read the comic. And weird is that for anyone who hasn't read the comic, it starts out with a wrestler elbow dropping a space squid.
Mm-hmm.
No build up. That's the first page. So the comics the writing though, I feel is kind of weak. It's one of those things where you kind of just have to go with it, or else you just aren't gonna make it past the first issue. So. The comic I thought was a bit odd. It has sort of its charm to it, but it's not one where if I hadn't already seen the show, it's not one that I probably would have kept on reading.
Mm-hmm. So you come from an interesting perspective because the comic came out, I would say, over a decade before the show actually came out.
Whoa.
And as for myself, I had been reading the comic issue after issue, and for me, watching the show after reading the comics felt really different, really weird, but at the same time, honestly, a lot better than the comic in a lot of ways.
You said it was better than the comic in a lot of ways?
I think so, especially because of the time that you get and being able to cover more ground.
I knew that he'd written a comic book, but I didn't know it'd been that long ago, and I'd never read it. I was just a fan of My Chemical Romance. And so I didn't even know this was coming out until I saw a preview about a week before on Netflix before it dropped. And I looked into it just because, it's, has that kind of that comic book feel. And then a lot of actors that I like that are in it. So I just decided to check it out, and I loved it, actually.
That's cool. So did you read the book right before the show came out, essentially, to kind of get an idea of what it would be like?
No, I still haven't read it.
Oh, you still haven't read it. That's cool. That's why you got to come back to us when you eventually do pick up. There's only 2 volumes, and a third is coming out.
The third one's
now.
In progress. I think it's on issue number 6, actually.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because I started reading it because I was like, okay, what can they pull from to do a season 2?
Oh, well, yeah. There's a lot of speculation talk, but let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Right off the bat, I think we've all seen all 10 episodes of The Umbrella Academy. So I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on the whole season, as a whole. Which characters did you like? Which parts did you think maybe weren't that great?
It was not Luther's fault. I'm just saying that right now. If you've actually been paying attention, it's basically everyone's fault.
Okay, wait. Could you establish though? Who is Luther exactly? And
Luther,
what makes
number
him...
one space boy.
Did you want to kind of like start off with a general idea of what the Umbrella Academy is about, or do you want me to do it?
I think you'd be able to explain it in a way that doesn't make it sound as stupid as it could come.
As crazy as gets. Okay, let me just give everyone a really quick summation. The Umbrella Academy is the story of 7 children who were all born into the world at the same time and adopted by a mysterious billionaire, and they all happen to have special powers, or seemingly 6 of them do, but one does not. And eventually they grow up, they grow disenfranchised with the whole trying to be superhero saving the world thing, and split off and take their own separate paths. But the death of their father has brought them back all together, along with the reappearance of one of their own who had disappeared for some, what was it, like 15, 18 years? And he's come
I think
back
I
it's
think
to
it was
warn,
18.
yeah, to warn everybody that there's an impending apocalypse on the way. And each of these kids are designated not only by a name, but also by a number. So Luther, as you had mentioned before, Hank, is number 1.
Yes.
As played by Tom Hopper.
Tom Hopper is, I believe you said he was from Game of Thrones?
Yeah, so he had a small part in Game of Thrones. But the stuff that I really know him from, he was really fantastic in Black Sails. He plays Billy Bones. It's like a prequel to Treasure Island that was on Stars.
Cool.
And then he was also Percival, one of the King Arthur's knights in the show Merlin.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I heard of him from Game of Thrones, and he's super tall, which is awesome that
Yeah,
he's playing a character who's kind of like, he's got super strength, but as you watch the show, you kind of learn that he's not completely human, but that's also from the comics as well.
I actually like how the show handled it better than the comics.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
I like
that is one thing I saw from the comic books was how Luther looks in the comic books, and I do not like it. I prefer the show.
We got number 1, Luther. Are you guys big fans of number 2, Diego?
The Kraken.
The Kraken.
The thing with him is I liked him in the show, and I got to the comic. I do not like him in the comic.
Yeah, he's kind of like one note, a huge jerk, really
Well,
arrogant,
the thing
stupidly dressed.
that throws me off is in the comic, his power is that he can hold his breath indefinitely, and yeah, that's his
That's so
power in the
stupid.
comic, and he's the one who's consistently telling Vanya that she needs to get the fuck out of there because she has no powers, and I'm like, you asshole, your power is to hold your breath. Don't give me that shit. Don't give me the shit that she's not cut out for this. When that's your power. And so I feel like I do like the change that in the show they've made it so it's that he just has like inhuman like knife throwing where he's like able to just like control where his knives go.
Yeah, he can like essentially curve anything he throws, but I don't know if they specifically said just knives.
It seems like it's just knives because I've never seen him curve anything else. So I'm wondering if it's like some sort of like limited magnetism or something. But I really like Diego. There's not one of the Umbrella Academy that I don't like. I like all the kids. But I do like Diego, and I'm glad that they changed his power because that is really, really stupid.
He never uses
and that's why they call him the Kraken,
Yeah.
apparently.
He never really uses that in the comic either.
Because when you think of the Kraken, it's the fact that the Kraken can hold its breath underwater, not that it just breathes water.
I would have thought they'd call Ben the Kraken.
He's called the Horror.
The Horror, yeah, which is pretty cool. That was number 2.
Horde?
The Horror.
I think it's like an H.P. Lovecraft kind of.
Okay, that's a cool name as well. But it's still Kraken works as well.
Number 3 is Allison, and she's also known as the Rumor, and she has a pretty cool power, which I think they kind of nerfed a little bit in the TV show compared to the comics. Hank, I don't know if you could elaborate a little bit.
Okay, because the moment that always sticks out in my head for the Rumor, and this was the sort of thing where like when I read this in the comic, I was just like, this is what I feel this comic needs to run off of, and also what the show should run off of. So bear with me. There's a part in the comic where they're fighting the living statue of Abraham Lincoln.
Yep.
And it's like shooting lasers at them and just doing stuff. And then she goes, I heard a rumor that you were assassinated, to which a giant statue of Wilkes Booth comes out and shoots Abraham Lincoln. and then it disappears.
Yeah. So in the comic book, Allison's powers, she can basically make anything that starts off with I heard a rumor that basically it come true, but in the TV show it seems like it's more of like a version of hypnotism or mind control.
I I feel like that's a good change to make because yeah, that's pretty OP if she can just like speak things into existence, like giant statues that can kill things.
We don't know.
But I do like sorry, what?
Maybe something like that might happen in a later, because I don't
Yeah.
know if we've talked about it yet, but we did find out recently that the Umbrella Academy got renewed for a season 2. So everything that we're
Yes,
talking
yes, they
about is
did.
all going to be from season 1, and we'll probably talk about how it ended, but also what we like to think could happen in season 2, and maybe the whole thing with the rumor being able to summon a giant statue could happen someday.
Yeah, so but anyways, I do like Allison. She has a very interesting story and I like the kind of avenue that they took where she's, famous and she kind of embraces that fame, she's an actress. And I also like the reveal that she may have rumored her husband, and she also rumored her daughter. I don't know how I feel about their romance though, because as someone who has all adopted siblings,
It worked
I
out for
like
Barry Allen.
yeah,
Uh,
they right. I have I have very mixed feelings because I like them. They have good chemistry together, but at the same time, cannot help but think of my family, and it just doesn't work in my mind.
just to elaborate, in the show, Allison does pursue, or basically they have a share. She has a shared connection with Luther, and they kind of are implied to want to be together, but I don't know if they really go that far in the actual show. There is that one episode where they dance together, but it seemingly all got erased by time travel, so it didn't really
Hmm.
happen. But just to let you know, Manta, that also happens in the comics, and in fact, you may be weirded out to hear this, but she specifically uses "I heard a rumor that you wanted to kiss me" to Luther.
Ew.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's kind of consensual because he does want to kiss her.
The comics takes rumor into a very, very weird place, especially if you're following the recent volume. It takes her into some weird places.
Ew.
We'll talk about number 4, the Seance. His name is
Oh,
Klaus, and he's probably a fan favorite. I don't know. Is he your guys' favorite too?
Robert
I want to
Hughes.
put him and Ezra Miller in a room together.
I yeah, he's another character. He's another actor that I knew from Penny Dreadful, and then but he's also most famously from Misfits, where he plays a very similar character to Klaus, but with his natural Irish accent.
Oh wow.
um,
Okay.
but yeah, he's definitely a favorite. I like the tragedy in his story. He kind of sobers up after, well, actually, he literally sobers up after, his misadventure with time travel. And I like his connection with Diego and Ben.
So just to be more specific, Klaus' special ability is that he communed with the den. So he was basically kind of at an early age forced to confront all these ghosts from who had died before and are basically trying to like talk to him, and he gets super scared, and he's kind of essentially tried to uh, numb himself from being able to see these people with constant drugs and drinking.
In the comics, he also has telekinesis, but it's only effective if he isn't wearing his shoes.
This is so dumb. The more I hear about the comic book, the more I don't want to read it.
Yeah, it's
It's a
one of
weird
those things
book,
where, like, you read the comic and then you watch the show and you're kind of like, oh, that's how dumb it was.
or it could have
Because,
been.
like,
Yeah.
you watch and you're like, oh, Gerard Way, he like made this. It's like I can kind of see, and then you see the comic and you're like, oh yeah, Gerard Way totally wrote this.
it's it feels like it's one of those rare cases where the TV adaptation corrected things from the source material, and it works out really well because with the show, it has like a kind of series of unfortunate events kind of feel to it, where it's a little bit kooky and it's looks at everything through a kind of like a macabre lens, but it's also like kind of a dark humor. But then the comic
Ex-
book sounds completely
it's very bonkers.
stupid.
Like you only have 6 issues to tell a whole story in per volume, so you got to cover a lot of things. You got to show some like really crazy, what was it, an evil orchestra that wants to
Oh
plan
my
the demise of the
god.
world through an apocalypse suite,
I,
which is the name of the first volume, to be fair,
it's literally called Apocalypse Suite.
which
So
is
dumb.
Yeah, and like it's one of those things where it's like, like when you have a comic where it says, "Hello, can I interest you in ending the world?" like through like via phone call. It's one of those things where like you're either on board with this comic or you're not.
Mhm.
And and if you're on board, you have to be on board 100%.
exactly. We'll talk a little bit about number 6. We had talked about him before. His real name is Ben, but he is actually already dead prior to the start of this series. And much like the comics, we have no idea how.
In the comics, he doesn't even show up.
Nope.
Really?
Yeah, he doesn't really show up at all.
Again, that's another addition that I
Yeah.
really like then. Cause
Exactly. I really like that
I
too. Like having Ben be a character throughout the first season of the Umbrella Academy kind of gives a lot of new like interactions and people to talk to for Klaus, and leads to a really cool character moment near the end of the series or the season.
Yeah. So yeah, he plays a very interesting role in that at first I didn't think he could talk, because he doesn't for the first little while, but then he's kind of the Klaus's conscience, which is pretty cool.
And this is a bit of a spoiler for the end of the season, but he's able to kind of like physically manifest Ben to not only be able to have him physically move people around, but also physically use his powers, which is, as we kind of like explained and hinted at before, involves horror and essentially a lot of tentacles.
Yeah, so that's the question I have is at the end of the huge spoiler, like at the cliffhanger, they're all being transported away and Ben can make physical contact and they can actually see him. Like not just like a hologram version of him, but like he seems to be actually physically there. So I'm wondering if in season 2 he is not actually alive again.
That's definitely a possibility. Like there's a good chance that from what we've seen in the cliffhangers, they might have like time traveled to the point where they came back to being kids. So maybe Ben would still be alive then in that case, but we don't know for sure.
Very strange.
Yeah. We'll talk about number 5, who is also a fan favorite for a lot of people. He is known
Hero
as
name is
the Boy,
5.
and that is his name, number 5.
Yeah, his hero name is the Boy.
AKA Damian Wayne. I've seen a lot of fan casting. And it's like, that's kind of perfect.
He'd be a good choice, but he disappears like prior to the start of this series, but we don't find out until later in the show that he had time traveled back in or forward into the future, where he kind of sees the aftermath of an apocalypse and spends a good portion of his life trying to find his way to get back.
30 years. Is it 30 years or is it like he ends up being like what, 56 years old?
Yeah, so that'd be like 40 years essentially, wouldn't it? Because he was like 14 or 15 when he disappeared.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Which is pretty crazy. But when he does time travel, he comes back in the form of his 14 to 15-year-old self.
Yup, and he's a dick.
Well, when you're an old man who's kind of like gone through life, and
going
and you're
through
suddenly
puberty again.
get stuck back as like a young, kind of like Goku in Dragon Ball GT, then you would rightfully be a little ornery.
Yeah, I don't blame him.
And then we'll talk about number 7, and she is a huge driving plot of the TV show, and she's also probably is played by the most famous actress on the show, which is Ellen Page, and she plays number 7, Vanya, who doesn't get a code name because
Yeah, she does.
apparently she doesn't have powers until
She
of
is
course later on.
unremarkable. There's nothing special about her.
Nothing, just ordinary, you see?
She just loves her violin.
Yes. Her white violin. If you read the comic, you'd get.
I've seen the picture. That's the other picture I've seen is her in the comic book.
She's like on the front cover of the trade paperback, so it's kind of obvious that, and this is also big spoilers for the end of the season, but she does have powers, and she essentially kind of causes the apocalypse.
Not essentially, she entirely causes it, but it wasn't as easy to peg from like right off the bat, that she had powers. You know, that there was something terrible about her that their father tried to keep locked up. But it still was they were still able to make like develop it in a satisfying way, and in developing her story and showing that her father did actually kind of care about her. And it sucked because um, Allison was part of it, part of the cover up, and she actually was actually locked up in the basement. So that was interesting development.
Yeah, and that's a big change from the comic book where we find out that in the comic book she never really manifested her powers until there was some stuff done to her in the comic, but in the TV show it's essentially when she gets rid of the pills that kind of control her emotions, and she's able to fully utilize them into dangerous powers. And yeah, as you said before, it's really cool that it's actually hinted at throughout the season in like flashbacks, and whenever like Sir Reginald Hargreaves monitors them, and you kind of notice that Vanya has like crazy spikes whenever they're sleeping.
Yeah, I'm kind of sad though because what's his name? Dickface, her boyfriend. What's his name?
Harold Jenkins.
Harold Jenkins.
Harold Jenkins. Freaking Harold.
Not
Jenkins.
in the comics.
Nope.
He's what?
He is not in the comics.
Oh, really? Well, I think he was a welcome addition as well. He was well played by an actor whose name I've seen around, but I just can't remember his name.
The actor's name is John Magaro.
Okay, I still can't like. I know I've seen him in a bunch of other stuff, but he has like one of those faces that like he just blends in, which works really well if you're a serial killer.
Makes him look ordinary.
Yeah,
Nothing special about him.
Yeah, I was actually kind of laughing and cheering when Professor Hargreaves rejected him so very, very rudely in public, and everyone laughed at him. But yeah, his story was interesting. It was much darker than I thought it would be. You know, I thought he was just some unbalanced guy or maybe a villain from the future or something. But turns out he's just he's a really sick and twisted, ordinary dude. So I did like his addition, but I was really sad that we didn't get to see Luther rip his eye out of his head.
No, but that's something that could be explored in the future.
Wrong about him not being in the comics, but like the way he's presented is not from the comics.
Well, he starts off as like the seemingly love interest for Vanya, but then you kind of see how he's like slowly manipulating her, and it's kind of like a interesting social commentary for those kind of people who do that, right? And especially in those kind of like emotional abusive relationships. Well,
I don't know about you, but it was also very apparent from the very beginning that there was something wrong with this dude. Just from like if you ever met one of those people that's just like way too friendly and they try way too hard to be, very helpful or like the best coworker or like, the best father or the best friend or whatever, but like you have no interest in that person whatsoever, but he just keeps trying and trying, and then you start to find out details about their life and it's kind of sketchy. And then you realize that this person is not really a great person. That he instantly gave me that vibe, where he keeps talking to Vanya even after their lesson's over, and just keeps talking and asking her out, and it's just like, dude, go away.
He was definitely very forceful when he's first introduced, and you could tell there was like a really weird kind of like darker vibe with him. And I know I might get a lot of flack for this, but to me, he looks exactly like Lin-Manuel Miranda, so I did not trust him at all right off the bat.
What?
I don't know. He looks like Lin-Manuel Miranda, the guy who wrote Hamilton, and he was like, "What is this guy doing in this show? He clearly can't be any decent, any good person or whatsoever."
I kind of hope he turns back up. I know he's spoiler alert, dead, super dead. But I kind of hope he pops back up because he was interesting to watch as just from an acting standpoint. He was just fun to watch, and you love to hate him.
Were there any other characters that you guys wanted to talk about? Maybe like part of the family or the two assassins?
There's Mom, the robot.
Yeah. She gets the name Grace, I believe, in the TV show, and she's essentially, as we find out, she's a I guess a robot nanny and a mother figure for the kids.
Yeah, in the comics, like the way she is designed in the comics, you kind of look at it like how could anyone form an attachment to her? Because like in the comic, she has like visible organs. She doesn't have
Ew.
arms, and she also like doesn't have legs.
Well,
Why?
she
I
she
don't
has like
know,
prosthetics.
Gerard
She can
Way.
move. Yeah.
Just a torso?
She's a torso with a head and a wire mesh for legs.
hmm
Gerard Way.
Yeah, I definitely like what the show did. um, and I liked her relationship with Diego.
Oh
Which
yeah.
seemed
That
a little.
that relationship does not exist in the comics.
Exactly. It's another thing that I like more in the TV show than in the comics, that more of these characters, especially Diego, he has all these connections and he gets messed up when he loses like the woman that he likes and later on his mom.
Yeah, you can't help but feel for the guy. Especially after you see her helping him with his speech impediment, and at first I've had vibes that they were a little too close to each other, but then you understand why he's so close to mom, and it's actually kind of sweet. And so yeah, I liked her as a small little side character, and it's interesting how she came about and got her job as mom, or so to speak, just because she was like the only robot that didn't get destroyed. But yeah,
I also want to talk about probably one of my favorite characters in the show, and that is Pogo, who is a really, really awesome
it just
and
pops up out of nowhere. It's
very
a freaking
well voiced
monkey.
character. Yeah, in
That was
both the TV show
surprisingly
and the
good
comic.
CG for a TV show.
Yeah,
He's very warm. He's kind of like a longtime friend of Reginald Hargreaves. I guess, of course, they share a lot of secrets between the two of them about the kids that the kids don't know about. And he just happened to have this unfortunate habit of like admitting when things are true, even when it works against his best interest.
yeah, that was a welcome kind of change from how it usually goes. With someone who shares the family secrets or whatever, and usually takes them to his grave or whatever. But like with Pogo, he doesn't try to lie about anything after, like, when people get close to the truth, or when they stumble upon the truth. He doesn't try to cover it up. He's just like, yeah, that's something we hid from you. It was for your own good, but we hid it from you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Also going to spoilers, I also like how his death is handled here way better than the comics.
What's
Yeah.
like
In the comics, he's fucking eviscerated. Like, like he looks out the window, sees the white violin, and then we get this single page spread of his brain just exploding out of the back of his skull.
Oh, man.
And then he like just drops dead, and like
Why?
that's it.
You would think he would drop dead, but
And it's like so like, I would say kind of tasteless, that it's just that it's almost comical.
Yeah, it's very sudden and there's not much hint. Basically, just Vanya just looks at him and then all of a sudden, goodbye Pogo. So I knew that when the TV show was coming out and you saw Pogo, that I knew his time was up, that he wasn't gonna make it probably past the season, especially if they're gonna take a trajectory in the story similar to the comic or the first volume.
Yeah, for me, it became a wonder if they were actually just gonna have his head explode like the comic. I was just like, geez, are they gonna be able to do that? Or are they gonna get away with it? But I feel like the way it was done here was way more tasteful.
I don't know. There were some points where the show got a little more visceral. You have a dude getting his nipples tased, or hooked up to a car battery, and you have Harold Jenkins getting shish kebabbed by every object in the room. There were some visceral moments.
Would this be a good transition? I can't speak. Would this be a good segue to Hazel and Cha Cha?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because I definitely want to talk about them. They're like one of the most interesting villain duels in TV show history because they're two very different people. You don't find out for like a good portion of the season where they're actually from or what they're actually meant to do. They're kind of badass antagonists, but they're also kind of sympathetic in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was talking to someone about them, and she said like that they reminded her of Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta from Pulp Fiction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see that.
One's kind of like the older, grizzled, doesn't want to do this kind of stuff anymore, or is really into that kind of stuff, and the other person wants to get out. And that's kind of a spoiler for their general character arc, is that Hazel in particular has found someone that he wants to be with and is willing to like give up this apparently amazing job of going around and killing people.
Yeah, I like that little. It seemed he was very much like a very meta mouthpiece, which is like how fed up the average Joe is, and it's like he has this like really extravagant job, but he has all the same struggles that the normal person has with too poor of insurance and the working hours suck and the pay sucks and all the benefits or is lacking in benefits. It was a nice little break in the fourth wall.
Yeah, and it's
I'm glad you like it because it is not in the comics.
the comics. No. In fact, Hazel and Cha-Cha are so one note that they're just like completely psychotic. You never even see them without their masks.
Yeah, you don't see. I'm pretty sure like they're both genderless in the comics too.
I guess.
Like because there's no like in the way they're drawn. There's no like, ooh, that one's a female or that one's a male. It's like no, they are both like it's unable. Also, I think the names are switched. But they are very one note in the comic. They're still entertaining in the comic, but they are one note.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Like another thing that because you have more time to explore these characters, or maybe because of padding or filler reasons, you want to give every character, especially from the book who's mainly one note, like a larger character arc. And it's cool that while Hazel is pursuing the love of his life and trying to get out of the business to basically be with her,
So weird.
she, Cha-Cha, played by the very awesome Mary J. Blige, is not only super resentful of that, but pretty much goes out of her way just to like kill as many people as possible, essentially, or even get rid of him.
It felt like she was kind of jealous, like she had a thing for Hazel at one point. Because she sees him with Donut Lady, who's way too old for him. And it looks like she kind of gets jealous, and then she goes into a rage and tries to kill him.
Essentially, yeah, because they've been together for so long as partners. We don't know exactly for how long, but you can kind of tell from one point in the series where Klaus sees all the dead people that they've killed that they've been busy killing a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is a great episode. Because of Diego's emotional arc with his cop friend, and then as well as Klaus, who kind of has to come to terms with how he was raised by Dr. Hargreaves, and you have Ben also, who really kind of becomes a character, I think, in that episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like a lot of things have changed from the comic book into the TV show. There actually is a similar situation where Klaus is captured by Hazel and Cha-Cha, but the situation that leads
in
to
a very different direction.
Exactly, yeah.
In the comic, Klaus kills them.
Yep.
Oh.
Uses
a very different direction.
Yeah, interesting power set. Because I don't know, I think they did this at the same time, but there was that whole moment where Klaus apparently dies and he visits the afterlife and he sees what could potentially be a personification of God, and that leads to him talking to his dad. That's from the comic, but that's from during the time that he's captured by Hazel and Cha-Cha instead of afterwards.
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah, in the comic, they shoot Klaus in the head.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how he goes into the afterlife.
What happens in the show again? How does he go to the afterlife?
He takes a lot of drugs at a rave or whatever. Isn't that how he died?
Oh, yeah.
That's how most people go into the afterlife.
Yeah, it's more of like a bad trip in the show.
In the comic, God is a cowboy on a horse.
Yeah, God is a cowboy on a horse. He looks like John Wayne. He tells Klaus to man up and, just kill those sons of bitches and all that.
Why not? Why not?
And then, like, literally the reason why Klaus comes back is because God tells him he doesn't want Klaus in heaven, and he's pretty sure hell doesn't want him either. So he's just going to keep on living.
Yeah.
While I like that, I do like the moment that he's able to have with his dad, with the whole shave and just talking about the family. And
I really like that scene.
Yeah, that was really sweet.
yeah.
No,
go ahead.
Continue. What?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, the part what I really liked about that is because you guys are. I don't even know if I need to say spoilers because we've already said spoilers already.
Yeah.
So if like you're this far into the podcast, we're doing spoilers. So like it's where Reginald reveals that he planned his own death as a ploy to get them together and to work as a team. And we were just like, oh yeah, I knew my death would get you all together. And Klaus just like, you kind of overlooked one detail, and it's the fact that we all hated you. Mm-hmm. And it's just, I love that moment where like Reginald just has such an ego that he thinks that his death will just inspire his children to work to work together once again. And for Klaus to kind of just be like, yeah, you really have no idea what we were like and who we are. And it was, so I really liked that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Same. What I was going to say was, just moving forward. Another character I liked was, what's her face? The boss.
The handler. Boss. Yeah. She's only known as
I want to call her Blanche, but I know that's not her name.
In the comic, she is a fish operating a robotic body.
Yep.
Oh my gosh. There's a point where like you go too far into the weird.
No.
And I feel like that's what the comic book is.
No.
The comic book sometimes I don't think goes far enough for it to work.
Which is, yeah, well, I mean, like, it's a TV show. They still got a budget. They probably can't put all the CGI into both a talking chimpanzee as well as a robotic fish, or a fish in a bowl operating a robot.
I prefer the attractive older woman to the fish.
Yeah, no, she's great too. Like,
yeah,
she like a lot of the plot of the movie is that you find out that she's the one who gives number 5 the job to basically go around in time assassinating people for the sake of history, and that leads to this apparent dilemma where number 5 is like there's a line that he doesn't cross, which is weird because of course that doesn't happen in the comic book where he's supposed to try to kill JFK, but instead he used that opportunity to go eventually back into the past to try to prevent this whole apocalypse that he finds out the commission, the organization that he works for, is wanting to happen in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I still like. Either I don't remember the reasoning behind it, but like, or just they never explained it. But yeah, that still didn't quite make sense to me. Why they would want the apocalypse to go forward, because it feels like that kind of cuts off a lot of their job. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it's a little bit weird.
Yeah.
But
well, like, and this is one of the things because it kind of makes sense in the comics, because in the comics, the whole time travel bit with Hazel and Cha-Cha and the corrections and the apocalypse, they happen separately. The first volume is the apocalypse, and then the second volume is where Hazel and Cha-Cha are introduced.
Oh.
So by that point, it's kind of like, oh no, it was part of history that you guys prevented the apocalypse. That was supposed to happen. While in the show, they've combined it, and now it's very much like, no, the apocalypse is supposed to happen, and you guys are supposed to fail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Welcome to the Umbrella Academy.
Well, yeah, exactly. There's so many weird things that happen. It's like pretty much straight out of a comic book, and you're just wondering like how is it that a TV show is able to not only adapt like the best parts of a comic while also kind of getting rid of maybe some of the more weird or crazier stuff, but also kind of like create something that is hugely popular, and I think is going to be like way more massively popular than a comic ever will be at this point. And because we know that there's going to be a season 2, we know they could go into all sorts of different directions. I want to ask you, Hank, since you read the book, what material do you think they could keep from the subsequent volumes of the Umbrella Academy to adapt into the TV show at this point?
That's actually really hard because there's a lot in the comic that doesn't seem to work with the direction they've taken they're taking the show. I don't think they're ever going to go this part, but there is one where they do go back in time because like they're still after 5, so they basically have to do the JFK assassination for him.
No. They're trying to essentially, do the assassination, but at the same time, I believe it's Klaus, Luther, and Diego are working against them to trying to prevent this assassination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like there's stuff like that where it's just like I don't think they're gonna go there. But where they possibly can go is because we see at the end of the finale that as they're going back in time, there's a brief moment where they're all their younger selves, and possibly what they can do is it's sort of them in their younger bodies and like in season 2 as they go through the adventures that they've had as kids, during which there are plenty of those in the comic, such as when they fight the Eiffel Tower.
I cringe to think of what that is.
They fight the Eiffel Tower, which is operated by
a ghost. It's like a zombie version of Gustav Eiffel.
To which Luther says, well, obviously it's operated by him. And then there's the living Abraham Lincoln statue and stuff like that. So I feel like they could be like Days of Future Pasting it, where we're going back to our past selves to make sure to course correct with it.
I guess kind of like make sure Vanya isn't completely like messed up because of what her dad and Allison decided to do to her.
Which would naturally bring in the I can't remember the fucking name. The temporal corrections naturally would bring them back in.
The commission, I believe that's what they're called.
The commission. It naturally would bring them back in because now they are radically trying to change. They're radically trying to undo like 15 years of history, which would have probably unbelievable side effects and ripple effects to the timeline they need to have.
Yeah, but you'd be able to bring back Cha-Cha, Hazel. The Handler would probably be still alive at this point in time, and they could introduce other agents of the commission in season 2.
Yeah, like they could do stuff like that. Not sure because there's like it's hard to figure out because again in the comic they prevent the apocalypse, and in the show they do not. They go back in time because they absolutely screw up. So it's sort of in this thing where they kind of paint themselves in a corner where they can't like pull most of the stuff from the comics. But I feel like once Dallas is that, I believe.
Dallas is the one that came out a while ago, and then this current one is Hotel Oblivion. Yeah,
that is the current one. When that one's maybe done, they could probably pull stuff from Hotel Oblivion.
Probably. Like, I would imagine Gerard Way right now is busy working with the show producers and showrunners for season 2, so he'll be able to provide some of his own input, and they could like take aspects of the material and maybe answer questions that haven't been answered yet in the comics, like what happened to Ben, and they could easily explore that event in season 2.
Yeah.
So I had a question. What do you think about the whole decision with Vanya, both with like how Reginald handled her as a child and what they decided to do, like what Luther decided to do?
It's not fucking Luther's fault. I have to say this.
I agree with you.
I agree actually too.
Like,
I don't
because
think it's Luther's fault.
It's all over the place that everyone blames Luther. If I were to hold one person responsible, I hold 5 responsible. Because like everyone points at Luther, but Luther wouldn't have had done that if 5 hadn't undone that one day. Yeah. Because that day Vanya finds out like that Harold has been manipulating her. Not to mention, not only does she find out, everyone else in the family is in a way better place mentally and emotionally. So they would have probably treated her better when she came back, as opposed to when she does come back, which is right after slashing Allison's throat.
Mm-hmm.
Then I also blame Diego because he's the one who's consistently been treating her badly. And then I have to put blame on Klaus because he's the one who threw out their father's notes.
Yeah.
So it is everyone's fault.
Strange set of circumstances that led them all to the point where they decided to try to lock Vanya in this soundproof room, but you find out that she's able to use her own heartbeat as kind of like a focal point for her powers and basically just goes crazy.
So I mean, but what do you think about the decision to just to lock her up in general? I mean, that specific decision.
That, I can understand I can understand both sides where it's just that is the wrong move, but also she did just slash the throat of Allison.
Yeah,
where it's kind of we need to figure this out, and it is sort of one of those things where you can, because there are times where people will do something, other people not realizing the emotional trauma that it's digging up. If season 2 happens and Klaus goes off the rails and Luther handles it by locking him in a morgue, everyone will have a point about Luther that he's absolutely a moron when it comes to handling renegade family members.
Yeah.
Part of it, a lot of reasons why we side against Luther is because we see it from Vanya's perspective too. From Luther's perspective, all we see is Allison with her throat ripped open, knowing it's Vanya, and now Vanya's just walked through the front doors.
Yeah.
Yep.
Actually, no, it's knowing Vanya slashed Allison's throat, used Harold as a pincushion, and then she comes through the front doors.
Yeah, well, I would have thought that the best solution would have been to give time for Vanya and everyone to calm down, and then just willingly give her the pills to control her emotions so that she's able to physically not be able to channel these destructive energies within her, and then later on, I guess, find a way to cure her or get her to use her powers properly.
I think curing her is not the right way to go about it.
Well, I don't think
I don't think she'd
make sure she knows how to control her.
That.
Yeah. Teach her how to control her powers. Maybe they can spend season 2, assuming they bring back the older actors to find.
I don't see why they wouldn't bring back the older actors.
Well, I hope they do. I think the season 2 what we'll get is a good mix of both. I had a really interesting theory of what I think could happen, which is that number 5, they do the whole time traveling thing, but each of the main characters end up in different time periods of their lives, so you get to see kind of all these events that set into motion that lead into season 1. For example, maybe one or two of the kids could have gone into the time before Reginald even left his home planet for Earth. I don't know.
What the? You dick.
Oh yeah, Reginald's an alien.
You absolute dick. I knew there was something different about him. I knew that there was I thought he was from the future or something.
I think in the show he's from the future.
No, I'm pretty sure in the show he's also an alien.
In the comic, he's an alien, and they mention it in a single panel that he's an alien.
Yep.
And it's, oh, curse you, Gerard Way.
It's all they show on the show is just him in this kind of futuristic place, and I guess his wife is dying or something, and that's where he gets the violin that he gives to Vanya.
Yeah.
That's all they show.
In the comic, they have they're Sir Reginald, billionaire, philanthropist, alien, and then you're wait. It's just a panel of so in the comic, that's not his real face. He's wearing a mask.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no more. Tell me no more. I don't want no more.
Okay, yeah, no more comic craziness, because this is all about the show and how
the show needs
really interesting
to go
it is.
full force with the comic.
Mm-hmm.
It's working for Doom Patrol, damn.
Yeah, it's weird because, of course, Gerard Way also wrote a lot of Doom Patrol, and a lot of the elements from his comics are being adapted into Doom Patrol, and it just happened to premiere around the same time that Umbrella Academy did.
I didn't know that he worked on Doom Patrol.
He wrote 12 issues, and apparently there's gonna be more, but not for a long time. Because he's busy with, of course, season 2, potential My Chemical Romance reunion, probably not. I think he's also working on a Marvel book as well.
Wow, I can't wait till that gets adapted.
Well, you guys saw Into the Spider-Verse, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you know who wrote Penny Parker and her spider robot?
Oh,
Oh.
That was Gerard Way. Yeah, he wrote that issue.
Oh.
that's cool.
I'm waiting for the My Immortal and Umbrella Academy crossover.
Ew.
Where you can wake up inside.
It was Ebony, Darkness, Raven, Dementia Way. Also being one of the 48 children born on that fateful day. So she's not just a vampire wizard, she's also a superhero.
And Brie Larson.
Okay.
Because she's also born the same day, apparently.
I feel like that explains something. I don't know.
Oh, good stuff, though, guys. Before we wrap up for the night, is there anything else that you guys wanted to talk about in terms of the Umbrella Academy? Manta, you probably already said it before, but do you have any interest in wanting to read the books now that we've talked about all these huge spoilers?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll probably blow through it in the bank at my job tomorrow. You know, I have a lot of downtime, so I'll probably just look it up on my phone and just blow through the volumes real quick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they are fast to read.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's what they seem like. So yeah, I'll probably check them out tomorrow. And the other thing I have to say about the show is it has a great soundtrack.
Oh,
It is a really good sound.
Yeah, we haven't talked about the soundtrack. So good.
There's some parts we haven't talked about with the show, like they had an aspect of it that I enjoyed. I just don't think they went with it enough. Is there were times where they would have sort of this like Edgar Wright-esque editing, or sometimes like humor, like in the first episode, it was just like, oh yeah, how many children were born? It's like 43 children were born, and then Sir Reginald comes and he's like, how much you want for it? And then it just cuts to wall of text. It just says he got 7 of them, where it's just like I like that humor. And then like when they have 5 in the mart and Hazel and Cha-Cha come in and start shooting, and it has sort of this panel by panel editing.
Yeah, it was
cool.
very Baby Driver.
It's kind of cool. And then the show doesn't use it that much.
They should.
And I feel like either it should have used more of it, or it should just not have used it.
Well, I hope they do use more of it, because yeah, it did remind me of Baby Driver, which I love.
It reminded me more of Scott Pilgrim.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
It was like, and if we could get more stuff like Scott Pilgrim, yes, please.
I like the thing in the... Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I like the thing in like the beginning of every episode. They have the title card basically like put onto something Umbrella related in this show. So it's like the Umbrella Academy kind of just pops up out of like different umbrellas. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it was a nice little touch.
I do like the beginning of the episode where the other characters acknowledge it. Like they're just busy talking, and then an umbrella opens up, and like Klaus shrieks at it.
Yeah. Oh man, it's a good show to watch. Like, if I'm feeling down, just like the soul. I mean, it just has a good tone. Klaus usually does something to make me laugh hysterically, like dancing with his father's ashes.
Oh yeah.
And then the storm happens, and then he's like, "Daddy!"
And they're all dancing to Tiffany. Well, that was from the trailer too, but I think it's a great moment.
Yeah, I do like Gerard Way's cover of Hazy Shade of Winter.
Oh, that's so baller. But they don't play that in the show until like the very last episode.
It's the end credits song, and on the final episode. And as soon as I heard it, like it was like the ultimate cliffhanger middle finger for me. Where it was just, like, because whenever there's like a show and they end on a cliffhanger, like it's usually like as soon as the credits come on. But the fact that it was the trailer song that came on, I was just like, you guys are just twisting the knife right now.
Oh man, yeah. No, it's a really good show. I do want to add that my girlfriend, she absolutely loves this show. She actually watched the whole season faster than I did, and she's like claiming it's like one of the best things that she's ever watched. And I'm really surprised because I think the show does have a huge mainstream appeal. I'm part of an Umbrella Academy Discord server. We've already got like 400 members, and
Whoa.
there's like these
Nice.
like all these like different people. They're all just talking about the show, talking about their lives, talking about how much they all love Gerard Way and My Chemical Romance. A lot of them are pretty young, but honestly a really positive environment. And it's interesting because for being people who've been so long as part of like a DCU fandom, it's kind of nice to like also see communities of fans who have nothing negative to really say about like other people or other fans or
Unlike
whatever.
us.
Yeah.
Yo, send me an invite. I'll be totally positive.
Yeah, of course.
I mean that literally. I mean that seriously.
Yeah, of course.
This is one show I have like zero gripes with.
I've been meaning to like try to get more people to come to the Discord server. It's pretty cool. So
I'd still like to say that I like in the show that Luther's transformation is actually a transformation, because in the comic, they cut off his head and put it on a Martian gorilla.
Yeah, it looks so stupid. Mm-hmm. I like the
problem I have with that is like when you do that, you might as well have just never made him one of those special children born on that day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, now he's a head on a gorilla, which could have been anyone.
Yeah.
It'd be tough to kind of like have to spend all that time to CGI a gorilla body onto Tom Hopper like that. But I think it makes more sense that, and this is spoilers for the TV show again, but he gets injected with a formula that basically regenerates him while also kind of like giving him gorilla body-like properties.
Yeah.
He's just another freaking human being that's just like monstrous. Because he's come to Salt Lake Fan X a couple times. And same with Jason Momoa, and they're both like just massive human beings.
Yeah, because he's really tall in real life too. So
yeah,
that's pretty cool. But yeah,
sorry. Like he looks big in the show, obviously, because he's wearing that suit, but he is fairly big. He is close to that size in real life. I mean, you see him as a normal guy in like the 4th episode or whatever. But yeah, he is huge.
Which is hopefully, like, I guess a sign of things to come, that maybe the show will be huge. I don't know if you guys heard, but apparently the Umbrella Academy was the #1 most streamed show for a good...
I did not hear.
The first good, few months that it was out. So everyone was wondering, when is it going to get renewed? How come they haven't announced anything? What's wrong with Netflix? What the heck is going on? Is it too special effects heavy? Is the budget too high? But of course, we didn't find out until, literally, I think, Monday that it got renewed.
Yeah, I think it was around then.
His wife is hot. He's a very good looking person. Yes, renewals. Yes. Glad it happened.
Exactly. So we've got more Umbrella Academy to talk about. I'd love to hear from you again, Manta, if and when you decide to read the books. I'll keep you guys informed of what's happening in Hotel Oblivion. Basically, a lot of effed up crazy shit just keeps happening.
Yep, stuff with dollhouses.
Yep.
Ew.
Oh, there's one really weird...
That's creepy now. Wait until you see in context.
No, there's one really creepy thing that you don't find out until this series that, completely blows my mind, that if they do decide to try to throw this into the show, that it wouldn't make any sense at all. And do you guys want to know?
Sure.
I'm trying to figure out if I already know.
I think they revealed this in, issue 5, so you might have already known. It's that Diego has feelings for Vanya.
I had not gotten to that yet.
Ew! That's gross.
Yep.
Oh, Gerard Way, why?
Good times.
Always Gerard Way.
Oh, Gerard. Got to get back on that MCR wagon, or at least make another Hesitant Alien, because apparently that album is good. Have you guys listened to it yet?
No.
I'll listen to it when I'm writing my Immortal and Umbrella Academy crossover fanfiction.
Nice. Well, on that note, that probably brings everything to an end for episode 26 of CBM Voice Chat. As always, I'm your host, Neophant, and thank you so much, AngryBlackManta.
Yeah, if you want to be inspired with your life, go look up Tom Hopper's Instagram.
Good stuff. Yeah, I have to check it out. And thank you so much for joining us, Hank. We haven't seen or heard from you in a while, but I'm sure you're busy with your fan fiction writing life.
Sure. Let's just staple it as fanfiction.
Exactly. The speculative.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you again for another episode of CBM Voice Chat. Take care.